The sun dipped low behind the sleek glass towers of Tesla's sprawling factory complex in Fremont, California. Inside, the hum of machinery and the rhythmic clatter of assembly lines were constant, relentless. Yet, in the midst of this innovation-driven fortress, Elon Musk stood in his private office, staring at a series of reports. The numbers didn't add up, and the worker complaints had begun to pile up. Anonymous messages, emails, and whispers in the halls. Efficiency was down. Employee satisfaction was slipping. It wasn't the grand vision of the Tesla factory that Elon had once dreamt of, where cutting-edge technology and human ingenuity meshed seamlessly. No, this was a factory gripped by issues hidden just beneath the surface. He knew it, yet no one seemed to be talking about it. What happens when the world's richest innovator becomes an unrecognizable face in his own empire? Elon leaned forward, his brow furrowed in thought. He had built Tesla from the ground up, revolutionizing electric cars. But now his company's pulse felt out of sync with its true purpose. If something wasn't done, if he didn't truly understand what was happening inside the walls of this machine, Tesla could lose its edge. Worse, he could lose touch with the very people who had made it all possible. That's when the idea struck. An undercover mission right under the noses of the executives, engineers, and workers who knew him so well. The plan was simple but dangerous. Elon Musk would step into the shoes of an ordinary worker, disguised as someone completely new, and see firsthand what was going wrong. No cameras, no assistants, just him, his instincts, and the raw, unfiltered experience of the factory floor. "I need to see it with my own eyes," he murmured, his voice barely audible in the quiet of the room. As he stood, the weight of the decision settled on him. To truly fix Tesla, he had to be more than just a CEO. He needed to understand what life was like for the ones who made his empire tick. And so, under the cover of a new identity, Elon Musk would go undercover in his own company. The journey ahead would change everything, for him and for Tesla. The following morning, Elon stood before a full-length mirror in a small, discreet office on the outskirts of Tesla's main headquarters. The room was sterile. White walls, a desk piled with paperwork, and one chair, which Elon occupied. The usual buzz of innovation that filled his everyday life felt miles away in this unfamiliar, unadorned space. Today, he wasn't the tech visionary or billionaire CEO. Today, he was just another worker hiding in plain sight. A team of trusted advisors who were in on the plan had meticulously arranged everything. His new identity, background, and the cover story. "You'll be Eli." Simple, forgettable. A name that won't stand out, one of his security chiefs had explained. Elon had felt a twinge of irony at the thought of becoming Eli, the man who would blend in amongst the countless workers in his factory. In front of him on the desk lay a thick stack of clothing. Faded jeans, a Tesla-branded shirt that could easily be mistaken for company-issued attire, a baseball cap to shield his face, and a pair of rugged work boots. No high-end suits or cutting-edge gadgets, just the essentials for a factory worker. Elon pulled on the clothes, each item feeling alien on his body. The jeans were too tight, the boots stiff, the shirt rough against his skin. He exhaled deeply, staring at his reflection. The man in the mirror looked unfamiliar, unremarkable. There was no hint of the man who had launched rockets into space or designed groundbreaking electric cars. For the first time in a long while, he felt vulnerable. His carefully crafted identity as Elon Musk, the CEO, would no longer matter. In this factory, he was just Eli. He tugged the cap low, obscuring his face further, and stood in front of a camera. A voice crackled from the intercom. "Elon, are you ready?" The familiar voice of his head of security, Emma, grounded him. He nodded, swallowing the nervousness that had started to take root. "I'll be fine," he said, more to himself than anyone else. Just another day at work. A few hours later, Elon found himself in a nondescript van, driving through the city towards the Tesla factory. His stomach twisted with anxiety. There were no second chances in this. Once he stepped onto the floor, it was all on him. No way to back out, no way to stop the process. As the van rolled toward the factory gates, Elon couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. For better or worse, he had no idea. But that was part of the reason he was doing this. The reports he had been getting weren't painting a full picture. There was no real sense of the challenges faced by his employees. Those who reported to him were too far removed from the reality of factory life, too eager to please or protect his reputation. He needed to see what they saw. Emma's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Here's what you can expect," she said, reading off a clipboard. "The assembly line will be your first stop. It's a fast-paced, non-stop environment. You'll be working with other employees, so blend in as best you can. Some will probably try to talk to you. Be friendly but not too familiar. Remember, you don't want to give anything away." Elon nodded, trying to mentally prepare for what was ahead. He had always admired Tesla's innovation, the speed at which everything moved, but the reality of it all, what it took to keep things running, was something he had only heard about in vague reports. "Any potential red flags?" he asked, the question lingering in the air as the van pulled closer to the factory entrance. Emma hesitated, then looked up from the clipboard. "There's been a drop in morale lately. Some workers are unhappy with their hours, pay, and working conditions. A few have even threatened to leave. You may get a sense of this on the floor, but keep your guard up. Don't let anyone figure out who you are." Elon's stomach churned. It was worse than he had expected. Tesla had always prided itself on its innovative culture, but a company could only thrive when its people were invested. If things had deteriorated to the point where employees were actively unhappy, he needed to see it firsthand. The van slowed as they neared the factory gates, and Elon could already feel the weight of the mission settling deeper in his chest. "Keep an eye out for any discrepancies. Look for the cracks," Emma continued, "because once you're inside, no one will be able to help you." The words echoed in his mind as the van rolled past the security checkpoint. The factory loomed ahead, a massive complex of steel and concrete, a symbol of what Tesla had become. But for the first time, Elon wasn't just the mastermind behind the scenes. He was part of the machine, the one that had to keep turning, no matter what. As he exited the van and approached the factory, Elon felt the overwhelming hum of the industrial environment. He could hear the buzz of machinery, the clattering of metal, and the voices of workers talking in the distance. It was overwhelming, the raw, mechanical energy that seemed to pulse through the building. But there was something else, too. A sense of detachment. The workers here didn't look like they were enjoying their work. They were going through the motions, doing their jobs without enthusiasm, without energy. He stepped into the break room where his shift would begin. The space was filled with workers slouched over vending machines, eating lunch in silence. It was a far cry from the energetic vision of Tesla that Elon had imagined. The thought lingered as he settled into his role. Today, he wasn't just a man in a disguise. Today, he would become part of the daily grind, and what he found could either drive the company to greater heights or force him to confront uncomfortable truths that could change everything. The factory floor buzzed with activity as Elon stood near the clock-in station, the steady hum of machines and the chatter of workers filling the air. For the first time in years, he wasn't the one leading the charge or making strategic decisions. Instead, he was just another cog in the machine, a nameless worker trying to blend in and learn the reality of life inside his empire. The clock-in station was simple, a digital scanner that beeped each time an employee swiped their ID badge. Elon pulled out the fake identification he had been provided and slid it through the reader. The machine beeped in confirmation, a cold, impersonal response to what should have been a personal moment for him. The shift supervisor, a tall man with a stern face, waved him toward a line of workers preparing for the day's tasks. "Welcome to the floor, Eli," he said gruffly, barely sparing him a glance. "Grab your gear and get to work." Elon nodded, following the supervisor's direction and quickly getting suited up in the factory's standard safety gear: goggles, gloves, and a hard hat. The smell of grease and metal lingered in the air as he surveyed his surroundings. This wasn't the future Tesla he had imagined, a gleaming place of high-tech solutions and innovation. Instead, it was gritty, dirty, and overcrowded. The workers moved with robotic precision, faces vacant as they followed the rhythm of the assembly line. His first task was to operate a machine that attached parts to the underside of electric car chassis. It was monotonous, a simple job with no room for variation. Elon's hands shook slightly as he fumbled with the tools. The task was mechanical, repetitive, and completely foreign to him. The realization hit hard. Running a factory wasn't about innovation at the top, it was about precision at the bottom. Every single part had to be perfect, every movement efficient. The workers around him seemed immune to the exhaustion. They worked without complaining, but their eyes told a different story. A couple of workers glanced up at Elon as he struggled to get the machine in sync with the rest of the line. Their looks were fleeting, but the silence between them was deafening. They knew he was new, and perhaps even more importantly, they knew he didn't belong. It was only when one worker, a man in his mid-40s with grease-streaked arms, walked over to him that Elon felt a shift. The worker, whose name tag read Carlos, took a step closer. "You'll get the hang of it," Carlos said with a small smile. His voice was quiet but filled with a warmth Elon hadn't expected. "We all have to start somewhere." Elon tried to return the smile, feeling out of place in the rough, mechanical world he had entered. "Yeah, I'm just trying to get it right." Carlos laughed. "You'll be fine. It's the job that's hard, not the people. Here, we just do what we need to do to make it through the day." As the hours wore on, Elon began to notice the small moments of camaraderie among the workers. Despite the harsh conditions and repetitive tasks, there was an unspoken bond between them. During short breaks, the workers gathered in small clusters, joking and chatting, finding humor in the chaos. Elon could see it now. This wasn't just a factory. It was a community. He had heard stories about employee morale being low, but he hadn't fully understood the strength of the relationships between workers until now. They helped one another with tasks, shared tips, and even gave small gifts like homemade cookies or extra snacks during breaks. In the middle of a grueling day, a simple act of kindness seemed to restore their spirits. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. As he settled into the flow of work, Elon began to see the cracks in the system. The factory's assembly line, designed for maximum efficiency, was anything but. The machines were outdated, prone to breakdowns, and lacked the precision that Tesla was known for. Each time a piece of equipment malfunctioned, the workers were forced to wait, wasting valuable minutes, sometimes hours. Elon witnessed a particularly frustrating incident when the robotic arm used to install battery packs on the chassis broke down, halting production for nearly 45 minutes. No one seemed surprised. Workers stood around, looking at the broken machine as if they had all seen this play out countless times before. They didn't complain. They didn't shout for help. They simply waited in silence. But it wasn't just the machines that were slowing the process down. The communication between teams was poor, with supervisors and managers failing to address issues quickly. Elon saw firsthand how delays were caused by a lack of coordination between different stages of production. The assembly line workers would finish their tasks, only to stand idly by as parts for the next section weren't ready. In those moments, the factory floor didn't feel like a well-oiled machine. It felt like a series of disjointed parts that had been hastily thrown together. It hit him hard. The vision of a sleek, smooth-running Tesla factory was far from the reality he saw in front of him. It wasn't just the machines that needed fixing. It was the system as a whole. There were inefficiencies everywhere, and yet, no one seemed to address them. During a break, Elon found himself sitting on a bench beside Carlos, who seemed to be the unofficial leader of their group. They were eating sandwiches in silence when Elon decided to ask a question that had been lingering in his mind. "How long have you been working here?" Elon asked, his voice soft. Carlos looked up, his tired eyes revealing the weight of years of hard work. 17 years, he said, pausing as if the number itself was a burden. "Been here since the factory opened. I've seen a lot of changes, but not always the kind we needed." Elon felt a lump form in his throat. 17 years. That was more time than he'd spent creating Tesla, more time than many of the world's great innovators spent building their empires. And yet, Carlos and so many like him had dedicated their lives to making the factory run. No questions asked. "You don't sound like you're happy with the changes," Elon said gently. Carlos let out a weary sigh. "Well, we're told to be grateful, to be proud of what we're building. And don't get me wrong, I am proud. But I wish they remembered us, the people who actually make the damn cars. We're not just cogs in the machine, you know. Elon could feel the weight of those words as they sank in. The workers had put their sweat and blood into building Tesla's empire, but they were treated like just another part of the assembly line. The pride in their work was clear, but so was the fatigue of years of unacknowledged effort. As the day wore on, Elon found himself questioning everything. Was this the Tesla he had built? A place where the workers were invisible to the top brass? Where their voices were drowned out by the demands of production? This wasn't what he had envisioned. The day wore on, and the factory's pulse seemed to slow in rhythm with Elon's thoughts. The hum of machinery, the clattering of tools, the shuffle of feet. Everything seemed to blur into an indistinct backdrop as he found himself consumed by the stark contrasts around him. The sense of camaraderie was palpable, but there was something darker brewing just beneath the surface. As he worked alongside the other employees, he became more attuned to the silent patterns of the factory. The unspoken rules, the quiet moments of frustration, the subtle signs that something was wrong. But what could it be? The factory was known for innovation, for pushing the limits of technology. So why did it feel like the heart of the operation was stumbling? It wasn't until the late afternoon that Elon first noticed the telltale signs. He had been stationed at an area that handled the assembly of the battery packs. It was a crucial section of the production line, and he was tasked with ensuring that the packs were properly wired and sealed before being sent down the line. The task was simple, but the precision required was intense. And that's when he saw it. A small team, isolated from the rest of the workers, was engaged in something unusual. Something he hadn't seen in any of the training materials or company protocols. A worker named Jared, one of the quiet ones who had barely said a word to Elon all day, glanced over his shoulder before pulling out a stack of what appeared to be safety inspection forms. The papers, crinkled and yellowed with age, were hurriedly filled out by another worker, who scribbled a few lines of text before sliding them into a nearby filing cabinet. Jared looked around nervously, then returned to his work as if nothing had happened. Elon's curiosity piqued, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He had been briefed on the importance of safety protocols, the meticulous standards that Tesla prided itself on. But here, in this moment, he saw a glimpse of something different, something that didn't align with the company's image. Elon continued to observe the scene from a distance. The worker who had been filling out the forms was back to his station, and Jared resumed his task of sealing battery packs. But the incident gnawed at him. Safety forms that were clearly outdated, hastily filled out and hidden away, it was too much to ignore. Taking a deep breath, he approached one of the team leaders, a woman named Linda, who was walking by with a clipboard. "Hey, Linda, I noticed something strange. Some of the safety forms, are they really up to date? I mean, they look a bit old." Linda's eyes widened for a split second, her face betraying a flicker of unease. "What do you mean, old?" she asked, trying to play it off. "I mean," Elon pressed, "they look like they've been around for a while. Maybe you should check them again? You don't want any outdated info slipping through, right?" Linda forced a smile, but there was something about it that didn't feel genuine. "Thanks for the concern, Eli, but I'm sure everything is fine. We're good here." Elon wasn't convinced. Something about her response felt rushed, as if she was trying to dismiss his concerns without addressing the deeper issue. The more he thought about it, the more it all seemed like an attempt to hide something. Determined to get to the bottom of it, Elon spent the next few hours on high alert. His mind buzzed with the implications of what he had witnessed. He needed to see more, he needed answers. As the day's shift came to a close, he decided to stay behind, claiming that he wanted to learn more about the closing procedures. He knew that the factory's true workings often emerged at the edges of the day when the supervisors and managers thought the workers were too tired to notice. He followed one of the lead supervisors, a man named Tony, as he walked toward the maintenance area. Elon had heard whispers about a recent series of breakdowns in that part of the factory, but no one had addressed the root cause. The story, however, seemed to keep changing depending on who told it. Some said it was a few old machines. Others claimed the company was too focused on new projects to maintain the old equipment properly. As Elon rounded a corner, he nearly bumped into Tony, who was standing in front of a large, metal door leading into the maintenance room. The supervisor was speaking with a technician in hushed tones, but Elon could overhear fragments of their conversation. "We can't let anyone know," Tony was saying, his voice low. "If this gets out, it's not just the factory. It's the entire company. We'll lose everything." The technician nodded grimly. "But the machines are malfunctioning. The safety protocols are compromised. It's a disaster waiting to happen." Elon's heart raced. This was it. This was the truth he had been hunting for. Something was wrong with the safety measures at the heart of his factory. The workers weren't just struggling with outdated equipment. They were working under dangerous conditions, and the problems were being swept under the rug. Without thinking, Elon approached the door quietly and peered inside. What he saw made his stomach churn. The maintenance room was cluttered with machines that had clearly been neglected for too long. Some of them were patched up with duct tape, while others had visible cracks or parts missing. But it wasn't just the equipment that caught his attention. It was the technician's face as he examined one of the machines. His expression was one of fear. "The wiring's shot," the technician said in a low voice. "If we don't replace it soon, the next breakdown could be catastrophic." Tony nodded grimly. "But we can't afford to fix it. Not now. If we tell corporate, they'll shut us down, and then the whole factory's gone. We need to keep things running, no matter the cost." Elon's blood ran cold. The factory was being run on borrowed time. The workers were putting their lives at risk every single day, and the very people who should be protecting them were too scared to act. It was all about maintaining appearances, about keeping the production lines running no matter what. He stepped back, his mind spinning. This wasn't just a factory issue, it was a systemic failure that went straight to the top. And the only way to fix it would be to confront it head-on. As he processed what he had just witnessed, Elon felt a sense of clarity wash over him. The truth was undeniable now. The Tesla factory, the place he had built, the empire he had created, it was a ticking time bomb. There were flaws everywhere, from the broken equipment to the safety lapses, and no one was willing to speak up. But this wasn't just about equipment or inefficiency. This was about the workers. Their lives, their safety, their well-being were being ignored for the sake of keeping the company's profits up. The system had failed them, and it had failed him too. Elon had come here to understand what was wrong with his company, but he never expected to uncover such a dangerous truth. The weight of the revelation still lingered in Elon's mind as he stood at the edge of the factory floor, the hum of the machinery now a distant sound. His thoughts raced, grappling with what he had just uncovered. The extent of the dangers, the inefficiencies, and the raw reality of what his workers were facing. But it was time for action. Time to confront the truth head-on, the reveal. Elon took a deep breath, the mask of an ordinary worker still on his face. He had spent hours blending into the background, witnessing firsthand the dedication and hard work of his employees. But now everything had changed. The time had come to reveal himself, not just to the workers but to the entire factory. He walked toward the break room where a few workers had gathered, some chatting, others eating their lunch. They hadn't noticed him yet, so he took a moment to gather his thoughts. His pulse quickened. The tension in the air was thick, and every moment felt like a lifetime. Then, as he approached the center of the room, he stood tall and cleared his throat. The noise around him slowly faded as the workers turned to look. Elon removed the cap from his head, allowing his familiar features to be revealed, his face framed by a wry, almost apologetic smile. "Hello," Elon began, his voice surprisingly calm, yet filled with authority. "I'm Elon Musk, and I've been working here undercover for the past few days." There was a collective intake of breath. The workers exchanged bewildered looks. Some stood frozen in shock, unable to process what was happening. A few even looked at each other, unsure whether this was some kind of joke. Elon Musk, one of the workers, a middle-aged man named Frank, asked, his voice trembling slightly. You're really him?" Elon nodded. "Yes, it's me. And I've seen everything. The good, the bad, and the ugly." A ripple of murmurs spread across the room. Shock gave way to disbelief, and soon to something far more profound, understanding. Many of the workers were still processing the fact that their CEO, the billionaire innovator they'd heard about on the news, was standing before them, one of their own. The reactions ranged from astonishment to anger. Some workers stood motionless, staring at him as if they couldn't believe their eyes. Others exchanged nervous glances, whispering to one another in hushed tones. One worker, a young woman named Jenna, stepped forward, her eyes wide with a mix of confusion and frustration. "You've been here this whole time, seeing everything that's wrong, and you didn't say anything?" she asked, her voice tinged with hurt. "What took you so long? Why didn't you fix this before?" Elon took a step closer to her, his expression earnest. "I understand your frustration, Jenna," he said quietly, "but I needed to see it for myself. I needed to understand the problems from the ground up, not from a boardroom or a report. And now that I know the truth, I'm going to fix it." The room fell into a heavy silence. Jenna crossed her arms, her face still skeptical, but there was a hint of hope in her eyes. She wasn't the only one. A few workers nodded as if to say, "We've been waiting for someone to hear us." Then, an older man named Bill, who had been working at the factory for nearly 2 decades, stepped forward. His gruff exterior softened as he spoke. "I've seen a lot in my time, but I never thought I'd see the day when the boss himself came down here. But I gotta say, you've got guts, Musk," Bill said, his voice gravelly. "We've been working like dogs. But if you're serious about fixing things, we'll stand behind you." Bill's words were met with murmurs of agreement. The skepticism that had filled the room moments before began to shift into something else. Cautious optimism. With the room's attention now fully focused on him, Elon knew he had to make it clear that his time undercover wasn't just a gimmick. It was a wake-up call. The discoveries he had made, the broken machinery, the outdated safety protocols, the workers' hidden struggles, couldn't be ignored. "I came here to see what was wrong, and I've seen it," Elon began, his voice firm. "The systems we've built, the machines, the protocols, the processes are failing. And it's not your fault. It's mine. I allowed this to happen. But I'm here to fix it, and we're going to fix it together." A murmur of surprise rippled through the group. Elon continued, his tone resolute. "We're going to upgrade the equipment immediately," he said. "And I'm going to ensure that every worker here has the proper training and safety measures. We will prioritize safety over profits from now on. The old ways of cutting corners to save time are over. I'll invest whatever it takes to get this factory back to where it should be." The workers began to nod, the resolve in their eyes growing. But Elon didn't stop there. "I'm also going to ensure that the people who are in charge of these decisions, the ones who have been hiding these issues, are held accountable," Elon said, his voice unwavering. "This is not just about a factory. It's about the people who make Tesla what it is, the workers, the engineers, the visionaries. You all deserve better." The room was quiet now, save for the hum of distant machines. Elon looked around at the faces before him, seeing a blend of hope, gratitude, and cautious optimism. He could sense that they were hungry for change, but they needed to hear something that would push them forward. Elon took a step back, his expression softening. He could feel the weight of their expectations, the trust they were placing in him. But he knew that the real work was just beginning. "You know, the thing that makes a company great isn't just the technology or the products we build," Elon said, his voice softer now, filled with conviction. "It's the people. Every single person who shows up every day, works hard, sacrifices, and puts their heart into this company. You are the ones who make Tesla what it is. Without you, none of it matters." He paused, letting the words sink in. Leadership isn't just about making the right decisions for the company. It's about understanding the challenges of the people who are working on the ground. And today I learned that lesson. I will never forget it. Elon looked around the room one last time. "This isn't just a company. This is a community. And together we will rebuild it from the ground up." As Elon walked out of the break room, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The work ahead would be difficult, no doubt, but he was determined. Tesla's future wasn't just about groundbreaking technology. It was about the people who brought that technology to life. The workers who spent long hours in the factory, the engineers who perfected every detail, They were the heart of the company, and it was time their voices were heard. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but with the commitment of every worker in that room, Elon was confident they could overcome any obstacle. The real revolution at Tesla wasn't going to come from the next big innovation. It was going to come from treating the people who made those innovations possible with